George Santos. I want to talk about other things. There's classified documents that we found in Joe Biden's garage. Dianne Feinstein. We could talk about who's going to replace Dianne Feinstein, but all Howie Klein wants to do is talk about George Santos because he scooped the Washington Post. There's a big expose right now in the Washington Post about the Russia connection between George Santos and one of Putin's oligarchs. Howie Klein has been writing about this for weeks. As usual, he scoops the mainstream media. Howie Klein is the founder and treasurer of the Blue America PAC. He also writes Down With Tyranny, where you should read him every day. Welcome, Howie Klein.
Thank you, David. I feel welcome.
You have been writing about George Santos and the connection with the Russian plutocrats who've been donating to him secretly. Tell us what you've uncovered, and how is this in any way related to cryptocurrencies?
Well, yes. I mean, the George Santos scandal is, many-headed hydra, and one of them is Sam Bankman-Fried connection. So, and that was one of the first things I saw because there was that was relatively easy to trace. A lot of what Bankman-Fried did was not easy to trace purposely, and a lot of the people who want to put large amounts of money into congressional races can get around it. Bankman-Fried even admitted that he gave the money to dark, kind of PACs who would then give it to another PAC, which would then give it to another PAC, which would then give it to a candidate, knowing that, or if not give it to a candidate, spend it on a candidate, and illegally the candidate coordinating and knowing that the money was being spent for a specific reason. So Bankman-Fried was someone who did that, and he and his partners at FTX put a lot of money into the race on Long Island, a district, by the way, that I lived in at one time.
Right, and that's
even more alien to me personally.
George represents Long Island, correct?
Well, yeah, that district was represented by Tom Suozzi, and then Suozzi decided to run for governor. So when Suozzi ran for governor, it became an open seat. The guy who Suozzi had beaten 2 years earlier was this guy, George Santos, this crackpot, who we'll talk about in a second. And then the Democrats just found like a milquetoast sort of conservative Democrat to run in the district, and he stood for nothing and meant nothing and was incompetent, one of the most incompetent candidates ever. So he discovered none of this stuff, which can fill a book now and certainly will be a movie someday, about George Santos. So who is George Santos? So, one of the first things that I talked about when I started covering it was that obviously George Santos may or may not be an American citizen, and that we need to find that out because you can't be a member of Congress if you're not an American citizen. He told one of his coworkers, he worked at a call center, and he told one of his coworkers that he wasn't born in America, that he was born in Brazil, which seems to be the case. When you look at his history, he does seem to be born in Brazil. He won't show anyone his birth certificate. He absolutely denies that he was born in Brazil, but he probably was. And then if he was born in Brazil, did he then marry this, even though he's openly gay? He talks about being gay. He claims that he has a husband, although that isn't true either, I don't think. No one has ever seen his husband. He lives with his sister in Elmhurst, and none of the neighbors have said there's ever been a husband who walked in the house. Anyway, and he used to wear a wedding band, that he would tell people was the wedding band from his husband, and he doesn't wear it anymore. So I don't think he's got a husband, but he is openly gay. So he is gay. That we know. And he admits it, and he says he's proud of it. But he was married to a woman for 7 years, which would be long enough for him to be able to get a green card and then apply for citizenship. Is that what happened? Was it a real marriage? If it wasn't a real marriage, it was just a marriage of convenience to get American citizenship, then he wouldn't be a citizen if that was discovered, which is probably what's going to happen, I think. So anyway, so that's one thing is the least important thing is what the media harps on, and that's all the lies. He tells all these lies, and that to me that's the funny part of this thing, and it's enjoyable and entertaining. How literally everything he ever says is a lie. He claims he went to a fancy prep high school in the Bronx. They say they've never heard of him. He's under any of his names. He has many names. He claims he went to two different, one college for BA and one college for a master's. Neither of those colleges say he ever attended, again, under any of his fake names. So unless there's another fake name that no one knows about, he didn't go to that high school and he didn't go to either of those colleges. And he claims he worked at Goldman Sachs. He claims he worked in other places. He claims all sorts of financial things that vary from time to time. Either he was very, very poor and had no money, or he was very, very rich and was building a $5.6 million house in Oyster Bay. I mean, there's so many different things that it's mind-boggling. But all those lies, including his mother dying on 9/11, that was a lie. His grandparents escaping the Holocaust, that was a lie. His grandparents being killed in the Holocaust, that was another lie. Him being Jewish and then trying to then claim, well, I never really said I was Jewish. I said I was Jew-ish, kind of. And but both of those are lies too. He's neither Jewish, nor did he say he was Jew-ish. Right. He said he was a proud Jew. And that isn't saying that you're Jew-ish. Right. So anyway, all of these things and many, many, many more are lies. Then the next step up for him is that he's a petty thief and has been, as far as we know, for his whole life. He's been stealing things. He can't help himself. He's a kleptomaniac. So, the first thing that sort of we became aware of was that in Brazil, his mother was sort of a caretaker for sick people. She was a house cleaner, but she also took care of people who were sick. She wasn't a nurse, but she did, try to help people who were sick also. And one of these sick people was in the house, and Santos, the son, came and sold the dying guy's checkbook. Now, as it turned out, the guy didn't die, and wound up pressing charges against Santos, who had written checks on this guy's checkbook. And there was a court case, and it ended with Santos skipping town and running off to America. So now the Brazilians have reopened the case. And although they haven't asked for an extradition yet, they probably will ask for an extradition. They're working with the State Department on how to handle this. Well, not the State Department, the Justice Department on how to handle this. So there's that kind of stuff. Then he had a boyfriend, a very, very, very young boyfriend, and he was, mooching off this young kid and making the young kid pay all the expenses. And then, and the young kid was very, very naive, and he really didn't know what was going on. Santos would say, big money is coming, but she never came. And then one day the kid realized that Santos had stolen and pawned his cell phone. Then later, Santos lived with two people in Queens. He had two roommates in a small apartment, and he was stealing their clothing. And, the famous one is now a $550 Burberry scarf that he stole. There was also a $500 Armani shirt that he stole. And so what I'm saying is this guy has led a life of stealing things from people. He met a woman in a bingo parlor in Brazil, and he went with her to New York or to Florida. I'm not sure where he went, to the U.S. He took her to the U.S. and emptied her bank account, stole all of her jewelry, and pawned that as well. I mean, this is a really bad dude, really, really bad.
But it's a low level. But up until getting elected to Congress,
now, that's what we're talking about now is all low level stuff. Right. Now comes the higher level stuff. So the higher level stuff, none of the stuff that we've talked about before is going to get him kicked out of Congress, probably, or probably even put him in jail before his congressional term ends. Now there is stuff that could get him put into jail. and that is when we're talking about obviously the citizenship thing. That's one thing. Lying about a fake marriage to get a citizenship. That you go to jail for that. And then the other, and also you get kicked out of Congress for that. And then the other thing is the financial crimes. So that involves many, many different things. So this is where I was talking about the Hydra. Most of the Hydra's heads are about financial crimes.
Right.
So where do we begin? Let's start with, since you asked me about Sam Bankman-Fried, we can start there. FTX put a lot of money into his campaign to try to get him elected. Why did they do that? Why were they putting so much money into the campaigns of so many candidates? And it was obvious, and it will be an open testimony when the trial finally happens, that they were trying to buy influence in Congress, and they were looking for people who met one criteria: corrupt. That's all they wanted. They didn't care what you were. Liberal, conservative, progressive, fascist, didn't care what you were, as long as you're corruptible. And they found George Santos, and they decided to try to get him elected. And some of their money helped him get elected. So that's one tranche. Another one is the Russia one, which I'm sure you're interested in.
Yes. And this is the big story. This is the big story that the Washington Post claims it broke, but you've been writing about this for weeks. So go ahead.
I've been writing about it for over a month. So, right. And other people have too. It's not just me. I mean, it's kind of easy to track who Andrew Intrader. I mean, Intrader. I mean, Trader. Intrader. I mean, it's like a cartoon character.
Right.
Talk about a spy. I mean, and this guy has been up to this for a very long time. He's a cousin of a close Putin crony named Vekselberg, and he's a sanctioned Russian plutocrat. The U.S. seized or the U.S. asked Spain to seize his yacht, which Spain did, and he has been funneling money into the Republican Party for a very long time, including a cool $1 million to Trump through Intrader, including $250,000 into Trump's big scam of an inauguration fund. So that was money that Trump was able to steal and put in his own pocket. $250,000 there, and other money, including helping to pay for the Stormy Daniels scam. Some of that was Russian money from this guy Vekselberg, and much more. So Intrader and Vekselberg found Santos. Now, Santos has publicly stated that he's been in Russia many times. What was he doing there? And for what reason was he there? I mean, what was he doing in Russia? and that's a question that no one has answered. Now, to me, the most telling and interesting thing about this is that the new Speaker of the House, who absolutely cannot afford to let go of Santos, he's keeping him in Congress, has said he will never see any state secrets. He'll never be on a committee where they're dealing with state secrets. Why? Why is that? Why is McCarthy saying that? I'd like someone in the press to ask McCarthy. You just said that Santos will never be on a committee that deals with secrets, and he'll never see any state secrets. Why is that? And why are you keeping him in Congress in that case? I mean, it's just an amazing story that goes on and on. Every day there's something new happening. Every time I look him up on Google, there's some other crackpot crazy story happening. This is a gift to the Democrats that will just keep on giving and giving and giving until the Republicans finally cut him loose. I don't know if you saw it. Over the weekend, the new chairman of the House Oversight Committee, I think he was
Comer?
Comer, Kentucky conservative who's very much an ally of McCarthy. He was on one of the talking head shows, and he said it right out loud. You know what Republicans aren't supposed to say. Santos, quote, is a very bad guy. And he said, if this stuff turns out to be true, we're going to have to get him out of Congress. Stuff is very true.
Unbelievable job, Howie. Unbelievable. Couple of quick questions.
It's
Go ahead. Continue, please.
To follow it. It gives me a great joy, and some of it's a little hard to follow because you're tracking this money.
Right.
Is when they're trying to hide where the money comes from, it can take hours and hours and hours trying to track it down, and you go down a wrong path, and you spend 2 or 3 hours going down the wrong path, and then you come up with nothing, and you have to start all over again and go down a different path. But eventually, it pays off. I mean, I wrote about this last week how a very prominent journalist, was yelling at me that he has to have the money. He has to have the money trail. Why don't I give him the money trail? And I'm telling him it's not that easy, and it changes every time you do it. It gets more and more money has been put in. And why don't you go hire and go to a journalism school in your town and tell them that you'll hire two of their students to be interns and let them track it down. It's just something that takes a lot of time. He just didn't want to put the time in. He just wanted me to do it for him. I don't even know the guy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
He's just the stuff I'm writing and demanding that I give him the information.
Right. You are.
There's no secret information. I mean, there is, but I don't have it.
So Howie Klein writes Down With Tyranny, and everybody should go there to read it first before you see it in the mainstream media. You're also the founder and treasurer of the Blue America PAC, which raises money for progressive candidates. Refresh my memory, as the treasurer of the Blue America PAC, is it legal to accept campaign contributions from a Russian plutocrat?
No, and he would say that he didn't accept campaign funds from a Russian plutocrat because he got it from the cousin of a Russian plutocrat, this guy Andrew Intrater. And Intrater is an American citizen. Now he was born in the Soviet Union, and he is obviously a Russian agent, but he is a U.S. citizen, and it's legal to take money from him. However, he gave so much money, he and his wife. So, what people say is, well, all he gave was maximum contribution from himself and maximum contribution from his wife. True, that's what he gave. However, he also put hundreds of thousands of dollars into committees that spent money on behalf of Santos. And there's some legality to that, some illegality to it. That's something that the Justice Department is going to have to sort out at some point, and I'm sure that they will. So that's one thing to consider. The other is the one of the few things that will put people in prison, like for real, in terms of campaign finance, is something called straw donors.
I was just going to ask you about that. Yeah.
So that's when you give money to someone else and you tell them to donate because you've already maxed out. So both in the case of FTX, Bankman's firm, and in the case of the Kremlin, that's what they did. They gave money to other people to put into Santos's campaign.
But that's hard to prove. That's hard to prove, however, right? How do you?
Hard to prove, but it can be proved.
I'm sorry?
So in other words, one of the ways you do it is like this. Okay, here's Abigail Friedman. Abigail Friedman makes $40,000 a year. She's never donated a single penny to anyone in politics before. She can barely pay her rent. She can barely support her children, and she just gave a maximum donation, a double maximum donation, because you can donate for the primary and the general, to a candidate like Santos. So is that the proof? No, it's not proof by itself, but it's proof enough to take her in and give her a good questioning and find out where she got that money from.
Right.
And that's usually the way they do it.
Right.
If they want to follow up on that. And I think in this case they're going to.
And so we've been told it's old news. Russiagate, the Mueller report, Putin installing, Trump using compromat on his opponents, funneling money through the NRA.
We're talking about this guy Vexelberg, whose cousin gave hundreds of thousands of dollars to Santos. Is that, what does that have to do with Russiagate?
Well, I'm just saying that a lot of people have poo-pooed Putin's interference in American politics and his.
Yes, well, I don't want to insult your listeners, and so I won't.
Okay. Is it possible? I want to ask you some more about George Santos, but I want to ask you about the war in Ukraine, because I followed Russiagate. I believe it. I followed the Mueller investigation. Is it possible that the war in Ukraine is also about Putin's interference in Western democracy, that they want to trap him in a quagmire to get him to disappear because he's got so much money, he's destroying the Republican Party and our democracy? Is that one of the incentives, one of the secret incentives behind funneling all these arms to Zelensky?
I'm sorry, but you were saying he, and I wasn't sure who the he was referring to. So give me that again.
What I'm saying is that when Joe Biden became president, do you believe he was presented evidence by the NSA that Vladimir Putin, with $1 trillion to spend, is tampering with democracies all over the world, especially American?
Okay, well, we know that. Yes.
And that the Republican Party is owned and operated by Putin, and we can't have it.
I mean, that's far. I no. The Republican Party, I don't believe is owned and operated by Putin. I think that Putin sees the Republican Party as a natural ally, but he doesn't own them. He has helped Republicans through I mean,
did he own Donald Trump? I mean, everything I've read.
Owned is a strong word. I don't know if you could use that word to say he owned him, although he may have. But I won't discount it. But I haven't seen proof that he owned Donald Trump. I think that he and Donald Trump, kind of saw eye to eye on things, and that Donald Trump. I mean, remember, Donald Trump had a history with Russia of trying to build a Trump Tower in Moscow, and that goes right through Putin, and that's how it all started. So someday that story is going to be told. I don't know when. It's certainly not. It's not a nothing story.
So let me ask you not to.
The right and the extreme left meet on this one, and they say this is a false story. Well, they're both, the extreme right and the extreme left are very wrong on this. And when I say the extreme left, I'm talking about the Glenn Greenwald folks.
Right. So let me rephrase the question, because a lot of people confuse what I'm saying with what people believe. I want to ask you what you think Joe Biden believes, what Anthony Blinken, the Secretary of State, believes, not what you believe. So let me rephrase the question and ask you if this is what Joe Biden believes. Do you think Joe Biden and Anthony Blinken are helping Zelensky in Ukraine to trap Russia into a quagmire the same way Zbigniew Brzezinski, Jimmy Carter's national security advisor, claims he trapped Russia into invading Afghanistan? Right? Because they feel Vladimir Putin is the number one threat to Western democracies. Do you think that's part of the reason they're going up so hard against Putin in Ukraine?
Yeah, well, I'm glad that you use the word part, and I feel that that's a factor in the U.S. Support for Ukraine. Probably is a part of it. I don't know how much of a part of it is, but remember, Putin has been very public about saying that he's trying to rebuild. He doesn't call it the Russian Empire or the Soviet Union, but he is trying to do that. He claims that Ukraine is part of Russia, and
right.
and he says it always has been, which isn't true. And he is looking to expand Russia's borders, and you know, it'd be natural for him to look right to Ukraine as a first place to grab up, and he did. He lopped off parts of Ukraine in the past, and he's going to continue doing that now. Oh, there's someone at my door.
Okay, but we have. Can you give me 5 more minutes?
Yeah. I'm just going to open the door, but
okay.
Yes,
it's the NSA seizing your cell phone, and you'll be called next week from Gitmo.
No, Roland is just back from spending a few days in a Hogan.
In where?
In a Hogan.
What is a Hogan?
Well, the Navajos didn't live in teepees; they lived in Hogans. And Roland rented a Hogan in Arizona, and is just knocking on the door. He's back.
Ah, well, welcome home, Roland.
He hears you.
Okay.
And I've to celebrate Roland coming back, I've made a giant Hungarian goulash, vegan goulash, and the most amazing pie that anyone has ever tasted. It's like I can't believe this pie. And one of the secrets to the pie is jalapeno. I mean, that's beyond belief. And Roland can't believe it either. And that's why he's here now. He wants to taste, he doesn't care about the goulash. He wants to taste the paprika pie. Not paprika, jalapeno pie.
Well, hang on. So what kind of pie is it, though?
Well, what it really is it's a mixed berry pie, but there's a pinch of jalapeno in it.
Interesting.
Yes.
I know that they make that with they do that with ice cream. So going back let's return to George Santos and the Russian connection. Is Putin influencing McCarthy? How far do his tentacles reach inside?
Well, there were some people, McCarthy, Kremlin Kevin. I mean, that is a thing.
And they'll be defunding or trying to defund the...
Yes, they are going to try to defund. You know, I mean, the Republican Party is very split on that. There are some, you know, obviously, traditionally the Republicans are very hawkish, and they are very anti-Russia, and they... you know, very much want to that they're very big, very supportive of the war, but the Trump people, of course, they're sometimes we call them the Putin wing of the Republican Party, and they, on the other hand, are want the U.S. out of the war and the U.S. to not be funding Ukraine, and they claim it's because they want to help Americans. But that isn't the case. So anyway, the food is on the table.
Good.
Although it looks like it's scalding, and Roland's dentist sent me a message saying that I damaged his. What did I damage? His palate, I think, or something, with serving the food too hot.
Oh, okay. So go eat. Howie Klein is the founder, treasurer of the Blue America PAC. Read him every day over at Down With Tyranny. We just scratched the surface. You're unbelievable. Thank you, Howie Klein, and follow him on Twitter at Down With Tyranny. Thank you, Howie Klein.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. That's Howie Klein. Read him every day over at Down With Tyranny, and check out the Blue America PAC. They raise money for progressive and socialist and leftist candidates around America. If you enjoyed this segment of The David Feldman Show, make sure to subscribe to this channel, please. And don't forget to hit the like button. If you want to help the show, that's the best way to help the show. Leave a comment. And if you're watching this on YouTube, leave a comment. We answer all the comments. We read all the comments, and then I try to respond to most of them, as long as they adhere to our strict community guidelines. Don't forget office hours every Friday night at 8 p.m. I'm David Feldman, reminding you to stay strong and protect the weak.